This way. Welcome to almost April. It's so crazy. I was just working on a podcast episode for next week, and I realized that the second one next week comes out in April. And I was like, oh my goodness, right? Time has a way of just continuing to go. And so that's why I love this time because we are going to take some time to pause and reflect before we just let another month turn into another month. And then it just kind of keeps us on this same, pattern of just trying to keep up with a calendar that we can't ever seem to keep up with. So I would love before we start, especially since we have a small group who's on live, there may be some of you watching the replay. So if you're watching the replay, hello. And you can put this in the chat area around where this replay is. But I would love to hear as you look back. We still have another week left of March, but we do this intentionally so that gives us at least that, a few days before the new month starts. So I didn't want to do it next week on the 31st because I thought, you know what? The next day is April, and sometimes it's like that's too quick of a turnaround. So this time we still have like 7 days. But as you're looking back at March, what are you praising God for? We call this our CEO praise report. So take a minute and then you can just unmute because there's only a few of us on live today. What are you praising God for this month? Maybe it was something that you were planning for and you were expectant about and it happened. Maybe it was something you weren't planning for and, it was just totally a God thing. Maybe it was something that, you thought at first looked like an interruption or something that was going to take you off track and ended up being exactly what it was. Does anyone have anything that you want to share that has come up for you in March that you want to praise the Lord for?
Just like really great family time and more clarity of just like how this time needs to look, because ours is still unique,
Yeah,
but yeah.
you're in process, you're figuring it out. Yeah. And so even though we
Yeah.
may not have clarity on the entire picture, sometimes just having clarity on one little piece of it feels really good. Because at least it doesn't feel like it's all clouds and fog all around us. And then, we're a little bit more able to maybe take that next step or whatever. So I love that. Anybody else want to share CEO praise from this month? Hey, Mary.
Um, well, mine's in progress. We're negotiating a lease, and this is for my not at work, not at my 9 to 5 work, but for my other.
Your business.
I'm not an attorney, and it's a little challenging, but I'm finding that if I can. I didn't stay calm about it yesterday. I will say I kind of had a down, dip, but maybe that's what you call a distraction, because it seemed a little, but got a good night's sleep last night and got up this
Hmm.
morning and things didn't just immediately fall in place, but the discussion was easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And sometimes a good night's sleep does that, right? Sometimes it's like I want to push through something and force it and make it happen. And I'm just like so tired or so my brain is like whatever and mush. And sometimes the best thing to do is be like, you know what? I'm going to trust the Lord. I'm going to go to sleep knowing this is in his hands and wake up and approach this fresh tomorrow. So I'm glad that it was an easier conversation today and that things hopefully are moving in that direction as you're looking at that. So yeah, yeah. Lorian, anything for you that you're praising the Lord for as you look back on the month of March?
Yes, we have a new home that we're looking forward to moving into, and I'm just praising God for the progress that we've made and the fact that we have it and we're able to fix it up.
That's fantastic.
And also, we put our horse down of 35 years, uh,
Oh,
and I praise God for the time that we had with her.
yeah, yeah. That had to be a hard thing, but also knowing that was probably the best decision that you could make, probably in the situation you were in. Mary is going through a like renovation project, so she's kind of in this moving, not moving, but has to move out to do that. And you've also got horses and stuff too, Mary, don't you? Don't you guys have like ranch or something like that?
We do, but it's a cattle ranch, so we
Cattle,
don't.
oh, cattle ranch. Okay, okay. I was just thinking, yeah, ranch in my head. I wasn't sure, what you have in there. So I would say looking back on March, there have been some really high highs and some really low lows, but God has just been that sustaining anchor through all of it. We got to spend a week with my daughter and her boyfriend when they were here, and it's just really fun to watch them and their relationship. They're long distance because they met at camp and now they're quite a few hours away from each other, so they don't get to see each other very often, but we got them here for almost a week. And so that was really fun just to watch them interact with them and watch them interact, things like that. And God did a lot of growing of me. Some of it was hard and painful, and some of it was really enjoyable and exciting. And so I'm looking forward to where things are going to go and grow in both business and personal things in the next month. So yeah. Well, before we jump into what we're doing tonight, I just want to share a couple of announcements with you guys. First of all, hopefully you've been seeing the things I've been putting out there about the It's Time conference that's happening in September. I know it feels like a really long time away. It's like 6 months. It's like 100 and, I don't know, 80 something days last time I looked at my counter, but that time will be here before we know it. So here's what I did. You guys are the first to know this because I just made this announcement to my CEOs in my coaching program this morning. The price went up on the 17th. However, if you want to get in and you didn't get in at that price and you want to be in the room, you can use code Get in the Room, all one word, all caps, and that will give you that initial pricing that was available in the first part of March to my community. Because I'm just really passionate about getting women in the room. In fact, Lorian, I quoted you. You're going to hear me talk about you on the podcast and also in an email this week, because when I asked Lorian, hey, why did you, say yes to this? She's like, because it seemed like a group of people I want to be around, right? And I want to have some like real in live person, not just online conversations and things like that. And that's what happens when you get in the room, a spirit-led room, right, with a bunch of other really committed go-getter Christian women business owners. There's going to be this thing that happens, and it's already happening in our virtual community as we're connecting and collaborating over there. So anyway, if you want to be in the room and you haven't grabbed a ticket yet, use code Get in the Room, and that will give you special pricing. It's only going to be limited to a certain number of tickets. So once those tickets are sold at that price, then that code will go away. So I don't know how long that's going to be, but if that's something you're interested in, go grab your ticket, use that code, and that way you can save even more on there. Also, I want to make sure that you guys know that I have a new, kind of like a mini course, I guess is the best way to call it, that's going to be launching in April. If you are a VIP like Lorian, you get free access to it, but it's called CEO Flow. And what we are going to do is we are going to build out an essential CEO system that's called your CEO Hub. Imagine, wait till you hear next week's podcast. Imagine open up your computer to only one tab being open. How many of us have a bazillion tabs open and we waste all this time playing tab hide and go seek, trying to find which one was the one that we needed to get back to? I was on with my coach last week in a mastermind and she was sharing her screen and I was like, oh my goodness, how many tabs do you have open? Did you know some people have 100 tabs open? How do you find anything? Even if you have 10 tabs open, you are wasting time. So I'm going to teach you how to build out this one hub so that on one tab, every essential CEO task you need to do is there. Every reoccurring CEO task you need to do is there. And every link you need to go do those things is right on that one tab. This is going to save you hours upon hours in your life and business and things like that. So like I said, if you are a VIP for the conference, you get that free. But if you're just interested in checking out the CEO Flow, you can get on the wait list. Let me drop the link in the chat. It's redeemhertime.com/flow. And right now it's just a wait list. The doors will open. My plan is April 1st, which is next week. The doors will open for you to actually be able to, for sure secure a spot. So in the meantime, get your name on the wait list. If you have more questions about what we're doing, I'm certainly happy to help you with that. So, all right. I just want to share something with you before we go into stuff in the planner, because I've been leading the study at church on the book of Acts. And the very end of Acts, if you're familiar with it, the last 2 chapters are a lot of stormy seas and shipwrecks, right? Like Paul's on this boat, he's going to Rome. There are 275 other people with him, and they leave during the worst time of the year. They leave from, I love this. God has such a sense of humor. They left from the port Fair Haven. Like, how funny, right? Back in the day, they would have named something Fair Haven, right? And that he was leaving this Fair Haven, this safe place, to go out into these tumultuous seas, because it was a time of year when most people don't go across that body of water to get to Rome, because God said, you're going to get to Rome. You're taking the gospel to Rome. Like, this is what I've called you to do, and you're going to get there, even when it doesn't look like it. And if you follow the story at the end of Acts, what happens? Shipwreck. They're literally floating on pieces of the ship to get to an island that they don't know what they're going to encounter when they get there. And then they don't know how they're going to get off the island to actually get to Rome. And yet, God very clearly shows up in Acts 27:25 and shows Paul a vision and says, you are going to get to Rome. And so are all the 276 other people. No, 275, because there were 276 of them. Everyone's going to get there, and not even a hair in their head is going to be lost. Like I was telling the CEOs this morning, even on a good day, on like nice seas, I would think that back in that day, somebody probably wouldn't have made it to the final destination, right? There would have been some disease that found its way across things, or somebody would get, have an accident or something like that. So the fact that 276 people are all going to make it, even after stormy seas, even after shipwrecks, are going to make it to their destination is an only God thing. And isn't this such a great reminder of like how we are to approach the journey we're on? Has anyone experienced some smooth sailing in the past month? Hopefully you have. Hopefully there have been some sunny days, some like this feels really good. Things are flowing, moving, whether it's in your business or your faith or relationship or your health. Anybody experienced some stormy seas this last month? Things are a little rocky. Things are a little like, I don't know if you guys know this, but my husband rowed across the Atlantic Ocean just over a year ago. It took them 42 days. I can't remember what the numbers were because I'm sure I could find it somewhere. But anyway, they were like, now when I say rowboat, don't think like row your boat, but it is this kind of a rowboat. But they were in swells that were 50 to 60 feet high. So when you were in a swell like that, you can't see land, first of all, because you're in the middle of the ocean. Second of all you can see is the waves, right? And they were in a lot of storms and things like that too, right? So we have a tendency when we're in stormy seas or we're shipwrecked, right? We're floating on that one piece of the boat, hoping we make it to land. It's really easy to look at our circumstances and just focus on that, right? And yet we have to remember God's promise, right? His purpose for us is to be in a relationship with him, right? Which includes eternity with him. So we're going to get there. And his promise is to be with us, that he is going to give us his spirit and everything that we need for the journey that we're on. And so what I did for the ladies at my study, and I just posted this inside the community, is I used to be a teacher, so here's the teacher and me coming out. I created this little thing to help you create a little life map to remind you that even when you're experiencing smooth sailing, stormy seas, shipwrecks, and God throws out the lifesavers, that you are going to end up at the treasure chest, which is heaven, eternity with him. And so I put the instructions of how to use this and the downloadable guide. On one side are these, like, you're gonna identify 23 either events or time periods in your life, and you're going to say, is this smooth sailing? Is this a stormy sea? Is this a shipwreck? Or is this God throwing out a lifesaver? And you'll see, like in mine, like I have a lot of greens. This is like smooth sailing. And then we kind of start getting some yellows, and then we start getting some reds. But we got some lifesavers in there, which are the blues, right? And so anyway, what I have you do is on the back is where you list out those events or whatever, and then you label them as to what they are. And then you pick whatever colors you want to fill in the circles. But again, it's just this reminder. And then I encourage you to pick a promise of the Lord from scripture to put up here. And here's the one I wrote. Joshua 1:9, because I'm reading Joshua right now. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I bet Paul needed to hear that. I need to hear that, right? In 2025, in my here at the Figgy Farm and in my business and in my relationships and things like that. So number one, you pick a promise verse to remind you of what God's doing and his promise to be with you. And then kind of it's just a great activity to kind of look and see like how God has been fulfilling that promise, even through times that don't feel like it. And if we know that forever with him is our ultimate destination, then yes, Mary, when the a negotiation isn't going quite right, that's how we can respond with patience and grace and love and whatever, because that's not our final destination. Or Lorian, when we're not feeling well, right? It's like we don't put everything in like, this is my everything. It kind of gives us this bigger perspective on our time and reminds us this life is about so much more than what I can see in the here and now, right? And about what I'm feeling and experiencing, all of that. And that God is working his plan, even through the times that feel a little stormy or a little shipwrecky or a little like I'm out here floating on a little piece of wood, hoping I make it to some island and, some native doesn't eat me or something like that. So anyway, I put that in the community after I shared it with the CEOs this morning and wanted to share it with you guys because it was a really neat way for even me personally to go through kind of looking at some of that. And I think it gives us this new perspective on our time, right? Of like, how do I see the bigger picture of my time instead of just like trying to micromanage the minutes? So hopefully you'll find that helpful. And like I said, it should be inside the community Should be right near the top because I posted it right around lunchtime. So I don't think anything else has been posted since then, but just go to the main page and you'll find it there. And it will be exactly as God told us, right? That's what Paul kept saying. It will be exactly as I've been told, right? When God says it, he means it, and it's what's going to happen, even if it doesn't look like it. So, anyway, I hope that that's a blessing to you. Okay, we are going to go into looking at our monthly planning, but before we do that, we're going to look back first. Okay, so Lorian, I didn't send you these questions with what I sent you, but I will read these out loud because this is the part of the planner that's really easy to skip. It's easy to just jump into the next month and start planning, and right, and it's like, oh, okay, let's go. And so there's some questions at the end of each month. It's called CEO reflection and says, what can I learn from this month? Right? Who doesn't want to keep making the same mistakes over and over again? Or like Groundhog Day, like, keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Hello, right? Nobody wants that. So we're going to just pause and take a few minutes to reflect on these questions. So let me read them to you in case you don't have the planner. If you do have the planner, it's opposite the CEO praise report at the end of the month. But the first section is looking back. So here are the 3 questions, and feel free to answer one or all of them in the few minutes that I'm going to give you. I'm not going to give you forever, but you can hopefully get this started and then set aside some time to come back to this. The first question is, as you look back at the last month, what's getting time or not getting time? What's getting time or not getting your time? Question number 2, as you look back at the last month, what's working or not working? What's working or not working? And then question 3, as you look back, what's joyful and what's stressful? So 3 questions was, what's getting time or not getting time? What's working or not working, and what's joyful or stressful? I'll give you just like 2 minutes or so just to take a few minutes, pick at least one of those questions to think about or answer, because I think that's always helpful to do. And then we'll move on to the second set of questions. Okay, the looking ahead questions. As you look ahead to the next month, I know we're not quite there yet, but here's why I like to do this to give us a little bit of time leading up to it. The first question is, what will I make time for or not give time to? So as you look ahead to April, what will you make time for or what will you not make time for? Second question, what will I accomplish or complete? What am I going to finish or check off? Or maybe it's not like the final destination of a project. Maybe it's just like a milestone. What will I let go? How many of us have things on our list that we would love to do, but it's just like, you know what? I'm gonna have to let this go to create some space for this other thing, or just to create space for myself, because otherwise I'm always at or over capacity. So what will I either accomplish or complete, or what will I let go? And looking forward, what will I no longer put off, or what will I save for later? And that falls under our D, our D in our 4Ds matrix, delay. Not procrastinating something you should be working on right now, but something that you are like, you know what, right now is not the time for this. So I am willingly going to save this for later. So what will I make time for or not make time for? What will I accomplish or complete or let go? And what will I no longer put off or save for later? I'll give you a couple minutes as you're thinking ahead to April. about where your intentions are going around where you want to invest your time. And then the last question on this page is, what has God put on your heart? So maybe it was something that kind of came out from one of those other questions. Maybe there's just something else that just God keeps bringing back to you, or he's really put on your heart. So what is that thing? Let's capture it, because that may very well be something that you are going to be led to invest some time in over the next month. Maybe it's something that's still in the planning or dreaming or praying part of the process, but maybe it's something that is ready for some execution. So all right, before we move on, anyone want to share anything? I know Mary and Emmy went off camera, so I'm not sure if you're available to answer or respond, and that's fine if you're not. But anything from any of those reflection questions that was helpful for you or that you want to share, whether it was looking back or looking ahead or looking at your heart.
So much of mine just revolves around basically blending family and business and on the road, like in this new
Yeah.
whatever it is. So it's
New
like
normal.
yeah,
Unnormal.
it's like it keeps coming back over and over again, but it's like I know that it all goes. So it's like, okay, but even like writing down these questions, okay, what do I need to give more time to versus take away time in those different areas? So
Yeah.
working through.
And here's the thing, Emmy. For those of you who don't know, Emmy is living in an RV with her 12 children and her husband. So there are 14 of them in an RV on the road, full time. Don't know for how long. Her husband's a traveling nurse, so they're like kind of staying someplace for so many weeks and then going to the next place. So whatever season of life you're in, yes, it's a very unique one, Emmy, but we always are looking at these questions and looking at our time from the standpoint of what season am I in? Right. I've been talking a lot about wise farmers, and we talked about the laws of the harvest and all of that. If you came to the challenge we did a couple months ago. And guess what? I live in a farming community. Right now, the farmers are looking at how to get stuff in the ground, how to prepare the ground, how to get stuff in the ground, right? Because it's that season. So it makes sense, Emmy, that like all of your stuff is related to how does life and business and RV life all come together? Because that's the season you're in, right? And Lorian and Mary, like you're in this like transition, moving mode, kind of like packing things up, unpacking, renovations, whatever. Like, so yeah, you're looking at your time from the lens of what are the needs in the season that I'm in? And so I think that is a really healthy place to be, because otherwise we can get really like discouraged, or like we can fall into comparison of either where other people are that we think we should be and what their time looks like, or where we were in a different season of life compared to where we are now. I mean, there's so many factors. So we have to go. This is law of the harvest number 7. You reap what you sow in this year's harvest, right? Like I can't go back and change things about the last 51 years, right? Like those seeds are planted and they're done. And yes, I have consequences, good or bad, from how I've invested time, right? And I also can't change anything about the next 50 years or however many the Lord gives me, right? So it's like, how do I pay attention to the season I'm in? So anyway, I love the fact that that's coming, Emmy, because that's exactly what we should be doing, is looking at it from this perspective of what does need my attention right now? Because one day, 20 years from now, like you're going to be like, do you remember when? Yeah. Anybody else? Anything anybody wants to share?
Well, I had for the look ahead, I guess one of mine was sort of practical and one was more, mindset. So what I will make time for is I'm going to experiment with doing a midweek review. I mean, I do a weekly review, but by then, if I've gotten off track, I've gotten off track.
Right?
So
Ah,
I need to find what my best time to do that is, probably on Wednesday. But we'll see.
okay. I love that, Mary, because the Lord dropped this idea in my head today, and I think you're confirming it. I'm going to start doing a series where I'll go live inside the community on Wednesdays, and it's going to be called the Productive CEO Pause. Because I think a business owner would just push through, like, hey, it's Wednesday and I still got to push through the rest of the week. I'll figure this out a lot on Friday or the weekend, right? But that doesn't really happen because they just roll right into the next week. But the value of pausing in the middle of the to-do list, in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of my plans just went out the window, or I thought I was going to get stuff done Monday and Tuesday and I didn't, or only got so far or whatever. Like, here is the work that most people don't and won't do, is to push pause and really pay attention. Like you said, like, where is my time going? And where should it be going for the rest of this week? And where shouldn't it be going? Instead of just waiting till the end of the week to try and do that and not really changing anything. So I love that. So start watching for the Productive CEO Pause inside the community, because I think this is where it's going to be little nuggets, hopefully like 5-7 minutes of just either something the Lord's teaching me. I had a great object lesson, perfect for today. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm sharing about on Wednesday of what happened, and how I had to schedule margin in for someone else that needed my time. So I love that you're wanting to do the midweek. That's good. Good. Yeah. Anybody else? You don't have to, just like to open it up in case you want to. All right. So depending on when you picked up the planner, it is an undated planner. That was intentional, because your intentions around your time don't have to wait for what the calendar says. But if you started it on January 1st, like I did, then we are about to walk into season 2, right? You may or may not be at the place where you're heading into a new season. Okay, Emmy's just starting now. Perfect. So you're season 1. At the beginning of each season, whether you're coming up to a new season or not, and again, this does not have to coincide with the quarters of the year, okay? That is just a construct or whatever. So your new quarter or season could start, at the beginning of May. That's okay. But make sure that you take some time to go through the season resets. Again, this is that pause, that intentional pause to slow down in order to speed up, right? In order to be more fruitful and faithful with our time. And so because we're all at different places, we're not going to go through this tonight, but I encourage you, when you get to one of these, don't skip past it. You should be able to do the couple of pages that are here in like about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how much time you really want to put into it. But it's going to have you, kind of looking through like some questions. It's going to check in with your beliefs. So you're going to do a steer belief map. It's going to take you back to your vision board and say, what am I trusting God for in these 8 areas as I move into a new season? It's going to have you identify your top priority for each area, which may be the same as the season before, or it may not, right? Things may have changed since the last time you did one of those. And so you may have a new top 8. Then it's going to have you map out your 12-week focus cycle. Like, what am I focusing on for the next 12 weeks? And so that has this in here, and then checking in again with your ideal week, because sometimes things change, whether it was because of a life circumstance or just you're needing to make some changes with your time. So anyway, I encourage you, when you get to one of these seasonal resets, go in and watch the videos inside the course, because that's going to walk you through exactly how to do a seasonal reset so that you really get the most out of this, instead of just doing what everybody else does, just jumping right into the next month and hoping for the best. Okay. So we're going to kind of skip that right now and go right to the monthly planning part. I'm going to let you on your own do the brain dump part of it. So over the next week, we've got time. Looking ahead at April, what are all the things that April holds? Right? Get all of it out of here, or all the random Post-it notes you have, or all the random notebooks you have, or whatever, and get it down on paper, right? And get it all out here where you can see it. And then you get to sort it with the 4Ds matrix. Delete. What can I eliminate? Woohoo, it feels so good to have something that you think you need to do, and then you're like, you know what? Big fat line through that. Don't have to do it. Delegate. What can you hand off, right? Maybe it's not ready to delegate fully yet, but maybe it's something you're working towards being able to delegate. So you're training somebody, you're going to hire somebody, you're going to create a system around it to automate it. I mean, there's lots of ways you can delegate in handing things off. Then we have delay, like it's on your mind right now, but just right now is not the time to do it. So I have some back end projects I need to do that, but right now I know for the month of April, it is not going to be time for some of those. And so they are going to have to wait until May or June because other things are taking priority, and that's fine. And then delight, what will I make time for? Especially think about not just work stuff. Like, yes, there are things you have to do and it feels good to feel productive, but like, what's actually something that's life-giving? Something that like you haven't been making time for and you're like, yeah, I wish I had time for, or when I have time, I would love to hear. Let's just kind of, if anybody has something to share, what's a delight thing, like a life-giving thing, like I would love to have time or make time for this, that you would love to like be like, you know what? Maybe it's only going to get 5 minutes in the month of April, but that may be 5 minutes more than it got in the month of May or March. Or maybe it's going to get an hour or 2 hours or a couple of days or something like that. My husband and I are going on a trip. So that's something for me because we haven't, just the two of us, gone on a trip, just the two of us for a really long time. And so that's happening in the first week of April. So even though technically, according to my to-do list, I don't have time for it, I am making time for it. And everything else will just figure it out right around it. Anybody else have a delight thing that's coming up in April or that you want to make time for in April?
I do. It actually, it has been pointed out to me that it would be good to take time to have some fun. So I am going to. And I get a newsletter. I honestly don't know how it got into my inbox at work, but I don't remember the name of it. It's like three, you know, fun things to do in town, that kind of thing. It has a cute name. And I thought, for whatever reason, I just opened it today. And like one of them was, it's like a concert. You buy a picnic basket and, from a local, it has local restaurants do this, different, themes or whatever. And then you have 2 tickets to a concert, outdoor concert. I thought that sounds kind of fun. I could do that.
Hey, it's almost like someone was listening to what you were saying. You know how like AI is like listening and then you see stuff showing up in your feed or your inbox and you're like, how do they know what I was talking about or thinking? So that sounds really fun. You're down in Texas. I was just thinking it's probably a little too chilly where I live to be buying tickets and, and hoping it's going to be good weather. But yeah, down where you are.
We've had a few nice days, but you never know. That I was thinking the same thing. It's like, okay, based on the way the weather goes around here, I could buy a ticket for something in 2 weeks and it could be 115 degrees. So who knows?
Exactly. Yeah, that sounds really fun. I love it. Anybody else have something delighting that's coming up or that you're going to make time for, you want to make time for? This is the thing we don't do enough of. Lorian, what about you?
I love crafting and I haven't made time for that, partly because all of my crafting stuff is packed in storage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there are other ways to craft, and I need to make some time for that next month.
Yeah, I love that. And so here's where you decide what is it and how much time am I going to give it, right? And then we actually put it in our plan because if it just kind of stays on that I should do thing, right? Like it never actually happens, but it's actually putting it out there and blocking the time. And guess what? Everything else can work around it, right? Just like my trip coming up, I'm actually going to a conference with some of the other women's ministry leaders from my church. So that's another thing I'm making time for. And yeah, but I love that. So get some in, show some pictures, Lauren. Now that you put it out there, we're going to hold you accountable to doing it. So we want to see some pictures in the community. Hey, I did some crafting time. And here's the thing. Sometimes when you pull that stuff out, even if it's just for a little bit of time, it's like, it just draws you in more often because you realize how much you either enjoy it or miss it or whatever that is. So I love that. I love it. Good. All right. Well, let's go into the monthly planning with our P's because I think this is a really good place for us to be. And we'll just kind of see how our time goes tonight. So again, you can do the monthly brain dump on your own. But our first P is pause. Take a Selah breath. What is God saying to you right now? Maybe he's been saying this over and over and you've heard it, over and over the past month. Maybe he's been trying to say this to you and you've just been so busy that you just, haven't really taken the time to stop and think or listen. But just kind of, if you're just, sitting quiet for a minute, is there anything that you sense like, this is what the Lord is saying or wanting me to pay attention to? Maybe there's something direct, maybe it's something indirect, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just the joy of just having a pause and I don't have to do or think anything, and that's okay. So take just a Selah breath and pay attention to what maybe he's been saying. I find patterns are a good way to pay attention. Like notice if I had something come up several times today. And so I'm writing that down because it just kept reinforcing the same thing that I'd been thinking earlier. one of the things we talk about is how to build Selahs in throughout our week, and even throughout the day. So like Mary, what you talking about, like doing a pause on a Wednesday is what I would call a Selah. It's that like, it's that pause, it's that breath, right? So maybe it's midweek for you. Maybe it's the middle of the day for you. I was working with one of my CEO clients today, one-on-one, and she is intentionally planning in a Selah pause around 3 o'clock in her day because she finds like, okay, before that, my brain is good and I'm able to be productive, but then I kind of reach this line of like diminishing returns, right? You all have that point where it's like once you kind of reach that point, you're like, oh goodness, right? It's better to stop now than to keep pushing. I say I turn into a pumpkin, right? Like at 9 o'clock. So at some point in your day, and here's the thing. I actually just was writing an email about this yesterday. My coach was like, this is brilliant. So at some point in your day, you have to decide ahead of time when you're done, even if you're not done, right? Like when am I going to be done pouring out or working or whatever that thing is, even if my to-do list isn't done, because you eventually are going to reach that line of diminishing returns, or other things that need or want your time and attention aren't going to get it. So as business owners, there's probably always someone or something, right, that we could be doing. And so if we are always giving into those demands, then we're just always going to be pushing through. So the Selah breaths are really important to slow down and take a breath and just be like literally not do something maybe for a whole 30 seconds or maybe for a whole 30 minutes or whatever that looks like. So, all right, our second P is our position, right? We're always keeping our focus word out in front of us. Now, those of you who were at the workshop we did last month, I have my focus word. My focus word is expectant, and it ties into fruitfulness, which is why I have the pictures of the grapevine stuff. So this card sits right here next to my computer so that I'm seeing my word every day. So I would encourage you, this is just like one of those little, like, it's just like a little boingy holder type thing. And, I just use like a little piece of cardstock. You could use a note card or a recipe card or something like that. What is your word? Write your word on there. And then if you want to do any visual stuff or whatever, you can. And mine's not perfect and evenly spaced, but that's okay. It was my craftiness, Lorian, that was coming out, and I still had fun doing it, right? So hopefully you've got a word that you are keeping in front of you. For some people, I know some people change it up every month, and some people are like, this is my word for the year. So what is the focus word that you want to be in front of you for the month of April? Write that down, and then take a quick minute to just kind of assess, scale of 1 to 10, how aligned are you to that word? So my word is expectant, right? So then I'm going to go, okay, if expectant is my word, a scale of 1 to 10, how expectant am I right now? And if there's anything that comes to mind around like, what that might look like as you move into the new month, go ahead and jot something down to remind yourself of that. I'd love to hear if anyone wants to share. What is your word right now? What's the word that's going to at least be in front of you for the month of April, even if it hasn't been up until now?
My word is settled.
Ooh, settled. And that's perfect, like physically and spiritually, right? Like, and as you're thinking about settling in your new home and being settled in your spirit, I love that. That's a good word. Yeah, as I thought about expectant, I wrote down 100 because I'm expectant for 100 women to be in that room in Nashville. And so it's that, yeah, holding out that vision, and then every day thinking about those women as I'm planning things and as I'm inviting and all of that. That's definitely something that's going on for sure. All right, our next P is patterns. Here's where we notice the habits, the things we do repeatedly, because we become what we repeatedly do, right? In any area of our life, including our business. So take a minute and notice your habits. Are there some actions that you are going to start? You've been saying, I want to, I need to, I should. Don't just do it should because somebody else said you should. Do it should because you should, right? Because God said you should. So are there some actions you want to start? Are there some actions you want to continue? Like maybe you have started a habit in an area and it's actually, like you're seeing some fruit from it already. And so you want to keep that going, or it's going to lead to fruit. Maybe there's some actions or habits you've been doing that you just need to stop. Something that is not investing time in a way that is producing the RODI, the return on time invested, that you really want. So it could be in any of those three areas. Maybe you have one of each. Maybe it's just, focused on one area, but notice something about your habits and where you've been consistently putting time or not putting time, and write that down.
Can you remind me what the first P was?
Yes, the first P is pause.
Thank you.
Yep. Did I send you this sheet, Lorian? I thought I had attached it in that email I sent you, but maybe I didn't.
You probably did. I didn't see it yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, if it's not there, let me know because I had went in and made sure I had a picture of it for you. So yes, it's pause, then position, then patterns is the one that we're in. Okay, our next P is our plan. Okay, so one of the things that I teach, and this is in the planner as well as you get a how-to with one of the videos that goes along with the page, but is having a 12-week focus cycle, right? So that every 12 weeks we have the ongoing things that we're doing, that are keeping things maintained, but like we're putting some intentional time into something that we are either trying to grow or accomplish or give some extra attention to. So when we get to this part of plan, here's where we check in with our plans. So based on where you are, you may be at a place where you're like, Lissa, I haven't made a 12-week focus cycle. So maybe that's what you're going to say is, okay, what would I want, to see happen in the next 12 weeks? So April, May, June, by the end of June, what would you love to see happen or accomplished or, maybe get into a certain milestone of that? And then essentially it's backwards planning. So if I want to be here by the end of June, where do I need to be by the end of May? Where do I want to be by the end of April? Right. And that's going to give you that focus for the month of April. And then I teach you in here how to break that down week by week in April. Emmy has 6 weeks left where she is. We're talking about this in our coaching call this morning. So instead of making a 12-week plan right now, she's making a 6-week plan. She's got 6 weeks until she has her next transition. So going, again, where do I want to be in 6 weeks before we get to that, we start moving out of here? And then backwards plan. Okay, if I want to be here in 6 weeks, where do I want to be in 3 weeks? Okay, then how do I break that down, into those weekly targets in between there? So you may already have a plan created and you're just going to check in with it. Or maybe you're about ready to create a new plan because it's a new 12 weeks or you're just starting this or whatever. So it doesn't matter either way. What's the main focus that April needs to have such that you're moving towards what it is that these all build, right? What I teach you to do is create this bigger annual picture, and then we break it down in our 12-week focus cycles so that way, hopefully by the end of the year or sooner, you are seeing that annual plan happen, right? Or have happened. And permission for it to be more than one thing. As I'm looking at mine, I've got a couple of things. I mean, one is like going to be the first 2 weeks of April, and then the next one will pick up the second 2 weeks of April. But then I also have the conference, which is this ongoing thing that's happening. So I'm thinking about what's the next piece of that. So it's okay if sometimes there's 2, but usually you don't want more than 2 because we spread ourselves too thin. What happens? Nothing. We don't get anywhere. We don't do anything because we're overwhelmed and we're too far, we're too overextended. So 1 or 2 main focuses that you're really giving some intentional time. This is where we like spend the time not just working in our business, but on our business, right? So thinking about what are like the bigger picture things versus just the day-to-day. I'm just checking boxes to keep the thing alive, right? So yeah, I know I have this conversation on the daily almost about how much time goes to putting out fires instead of putting our business on fire, right? And there's a difference. And we have to make the time for those things. So check in with where you are with that, and hopefully that will trigger you creating a 12-week plan for this next 12 weeks or wherever you are in there. All right, our next P is preview, looking ahead at the month of April. Maybe you already have things written on your monthly spread as you flip the page. Maybe you don't. But what things are coming up that you need to plan or prepare for? What is happening that you need to plan or prepare for in the next month? Start jotting some of those things down here now so that it's starting to trigger in your brain. Okay, this is coming. Like, for example, I've got 2 trips. I did prepare the dog sitter for the first one, but I have not reached out to anybody about the second one. So I will need to make sure to do that. Maybe you got some other things that are happening. Maybe a birthday, an anniversary, a meeting, an appointment, a project, something you're showing up to. Sometimes just praying, Lord, what am I not seeing that I should be seeing? Okay, I'm going to pause us and kind of flip us to our monthly spread before we go on to the last 2 Ps of making sure that the things that are coming up, the commitments you have, are here on your monthly spread. So when you look at a monthly spread, right, it may be a blank page for you. Maybe you already have some things in like I do. First of all, I love the quote that I picked for this month. It says, "The goal of our time is not productivity, but presence." I was like, wow. In fact, I even like wrote another version of it somewhere in my journal, so it's probably not sitting right here, but like the goal of our time is not productivity or profitability, but it's that deeper presence. It's that, I forgot how I wrote it out. I'm gonna have to find where I stuck that, because when I saw this quote, I was like, it triggered something else to add to it. But yeah, we're not just going for checking boxes, we're going for producing fruit, right? And meaningful fruit, and fruit that's going to last, not just look shiny on the outside. So I've given you a checklist over on the left-hand side when you get to a monthly spread. The first thing you're going to do is make sure you put in your weekly Sabbaths and your Selah pauses. I just had this conversation around Sabbath today with a one-on-one client that it doesn't mean it has to be 24 hours. I don't do anything. She lives in an area of the country where there are a lot of Orthodox Jews. And so she was telling me that when she's a nurse, so, I mean, you met her this morning, when she is like at the hospital and it's Sabbath, they're not allowed to push the button for the elevator, right? Because that is work. So we're not saying like, to whatever degree, like I can't do anything, but like, what does Sabbathing look like for you? And how are you making space? How is one day a week, or at least a part of one day a week, looking different than the rest of the week? How are you sanctifying time and setting it aside for the Lord in some way? So give you a minute to make sure that you've got those in there, because guess what? If we don't fill that time, if we don't put those in, someone else will fill that time for us, right? We have Easter coming up next month too. It's a late one, so make sure that that's on there on the 20th as you're putting stuff in there. And where your weekly pause is going to go. So Mary, this is a great time to like put in those weekly pauses on Wednesdays and get those in your calendar. So when you're doing your weekly planning, you're seeing, oh yeah, right, it's that reminder, I'm doing this. The second thing we make sure is on our monthly spread, the second checkbox is personal events and commitments. Where are you already committed to be somewhere? Whether it's a committee meeting, whether it's an event, maybe it's a birthday party, maybe it's a date night, maybe it's like, are those things on here? So that again, that time doesn't get filled with something else. So take a minute and note what needs to be on here. I serve in the nursery on the 5th Sunday, which happens once a quarter. And so that is coming up in April. So I'm making sure that's on there. All right, the next check spot is work events or commitments. Are there any things for the business you do or the work that you do that need to be in here? So that way, when you sit down and do your weekly planning, you go here first, right? What I do when I do my weekly planning, I open up my monthly spread and I open up my Google Calendar, which is what other people get to schedule on, right? And then from using those two things, I do my weekly planning in the planner. So I've got the monthly stuff that I've written in here, and then I've also got that Google Calendar, and then it kind of syncs everything together. And then if you have some monthly milestones or weekly targets for the 12-week focus cycle that you're in, put those on there. And maybe don't save them for Friday, unless Friday's a really good day for you to check in with yourself, because like Mary said, sometimes by the end of the week, we're like, so much for that, just shooting for the weekend now, right? So maybe make that on a Thursday or a Wednesday, right? We're going to check in with where you're at with some things, instead of making it towards the end of the week. Yes, this is the month overview, Emmy, sorry. So over on the side, I'm just walking us through the checklist right here. So as you do your monthly planning, this is that reminder of, do I have my Selahs and my Sabbaths? Do I have my personal commitments? Do I have my business commitments? And do I have the things that I'm working on for my focus?
Okay, I think I'm just personally struggling with this because I'm like, these boxes are so small.
Well, here's the thing. This is not your to-do list. This is not like everything, right? So what I do is the only things I put on here are like, if there's specific, like a meeting or an appointment time that I need to make sure that I keep that in mind, then I put that on there. But like, you don't have to put like homeschooling on there because you know what days you homeschool and stuff like that. Now you might want your husband's work schedule. So as you know that, because I know you kind of get that in cycles, then maybe you kind of draw, a box around those days or something like that so you can see it. But yes, everything is not to live in here. This is not our to-do list. This just helps us know where we have to show up when. And then that's when I teach you, like what I talked about earlier, that CEO hub, that's going to hold all of your tasks. So this doesn't become just a glorified to-do list that lives in these little tiny boxes and makes you feel overwhelmed every time you look at it. Okay. It should be spacious. Notice I don't have, there's lots of white space in mine now. Again, I don't have 12 kids, but there's lots of white space in there because these are just like the specific things for this month. All the regular ongoing stuff is going to be in my idea week. And so that doesn't have to be written on here. So good question. I'm glad you are sharing that. Okay. So looking at that, and this actually leads us really well, Emmy, to our next P. So we go back to the monthly planning page. Our next P is pace. Sometimes we look at all the things filling those boxes and we start going and feel like we have to start running, right? So how are you going to commit to slow down? Where are you going to build in margin or white space so that you are not maxed out, worn out, burned out, so that you're not burning the candles at both ends, so that you're not, just always constantly going? This is going to be a little bit of what I share about on Wednesday in our first Productive CEO pause. So I'm not going to share it yet, but we shouldn't be like, stretching our time so far that like everything is like one thing is bumping up to the next, because we all know how that goes, right? It's like traffic jam, right? One car hits the next car, hits the next car, and then you got this big old pile up, and it takes a whole lot more time, energy, and everything else to clean that up. So we want to make sure that we have some margin and white space. So what does that look like for you? As you look ahead at the month of April, what are maybe a couple of ideas of what some of that margin or white space might look like? And how can you be intentional about it? I know for me, one example is that before I go on a trip, I block off my calendar at least the day before I leave and the day after I get home, just to leave a little bit of extra margin. That doesn't mean I can't allow something to come in there, but just to make it such that like there isn't anything that I officially have to do on either end. I find that, instead of working on things right up until the minute I leave and then, coming back and jumping right into it, I need some margin there. So because I've got 2 trips coming up this month, I know that's a margin white space that I need to put in there. Maybe it's like, this is when I'm done working, right? Whether I'm done or not, whether I still have a list or not, I'm done at this time and I unplug regardless of, whether or not the list was all checked off. So maybe it's a time in the day. And then after that becomes, what more white space type things. So it can look different for different people, but how are you going to commit to slow down and to watch your pace? And ultimately, we can make plans, right? In his heart, a man plans his way, but the Lord determines his steps, right? So here's where we always hold this loosely. And so we're going to end with our last P right here, perfect timing, right here, 2 minutes before the top of the hour. And that is praying over these things that are in front of us. Because whether you feel overwhelmed or whether you feel like, wow, I don't really have a whole lot going on, or somewhere in between, it can be really easy to take it into our hands and start running off like it all depends on us. Right? But it doesn't. And so here's where we say, if the Lord wills, these are my plans. These are the things that I feel like right now, knowing what I know and what he's told me and how he's been leading, that this is where my time is supposed to go. But guess what? Leaving space for the Spirit to move and to use the big old pink eraser to erase some things or rearrange some things, because sometimes that's exactly what happens. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. So let me pray over us. If you have a specific prayer request over this next month, drop it in the chat. I would love to specifically pray over that. We do have the prayer request section of our community as well. So at any time, you can drop prayer requests in there for people to be praying over. We don't want you to ever feel like you're on your own or carrying something all by yourself. So know that that's available in our community to do that. So Lord, we thank you for the gift of time. We thank you for your purpose in our time. God, thank you that your ultimate purpose is for us to know you and to be in relationship with you. And God, when we get discouraged or distracted, we get detoured or delayed, help us not to just look around at the circumstances and where we think we should be or where we don't want to be, but help us to have the bigger picture in mind, knowing that everything in this life is leading towards eternity with you. And God, may that direct where our time is going in the here and now, that we invest it wisely because we see it as this gift that you have entrusted to us, with a purpose to grow and guard the assets that you've given us. And that primary one is our time. So Lord, you know what our calendars look like right now, and you know how our hearts feel about the things we see in front of us. And I just pray that you will teach us what it means to submit our time to you, to trust you, to make plans and hold them loosely, to let your Spirit lead us. God, I thank you in advance for the ways that you are going to move in this next month that we don't even know to put on the calendar yet. And the ways that we'll be praising you a month from now. And I thank you for the times when you're going to divinely interrupt our plans because you've got something different or better for us. And I pray that you'll give us a spirit to be able to not only hear your voice, but also to heed your voice and to obey. And so, Lord, I just pray over this next month. I pray that, it'll be glorifying to you. We'd be wise stewards of our time, and that we would produce abundant fruit to show others that we are your disciples. So thank you. Thank you for each woman here live and for each woman who's listening to the replay. May her time be well invested and produce much fruitfulness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, thanks for joining us. We've got another week before April officially starts, so don't feel like, if you didn't get everything down, either on the questions or as you're working on the monthly plan, it's okay. You're not behind. You still have time. Make time to do this, reflecting of looking back and then looking ahead, and having these intentions around our time. So anything else anyone needs before we go? All right, so this replay will be inside the community once I get it uploaded. And again, if you want to grab a ticket to It's Time conference, use code Get in the Room, which will give you special pricing. And if you're interested in learning more about CEO Flow, just make sure you click that link, redeemhertime.com/flow, and get on the wait list for that coming out in just over a week. So, all right, you guys, thanks for joining me tonight. Enjoy the rest of March, and I will see you inside the community.
Bye-bye.